Want to start today by defining what cryptocurrency is. Um, Cryptocurrency, as the slide says, is a digital form of currency. It was created to function as a medium of exchange, which by now you all would understand that that is one of the features of a currency, to act as a medium of exchange. It is a virtual asset that works much like traditional paper money. So it has the same functionality and similarity like the paper money, because in truth and in fact, as you learned last week, paper money does not have a store of value. And for most cryptocurrencies, there isn't a store of value in it either. Yet it is something, it is an alternative because of its technology, which we'll touch on a little later, opens up great opportunities that the restrictions that paper money holds, you do not experience in the space of cryptocurrency. And of course, the difference is that paper money has a centralized authority that controls it, right? And the centralized system is called the central bank, right? But cryptocurrencies use certain concepts, and I mentioned it last week. There are 4 spaces cryptocurrencies operate in. It operates with the factor of history. It deals with the factor of cryptography. It deals with the factor of computer science and also economics. So that what you all are looking at, those videos that you all are looking at for the past week, and those of you still to look at it, are actually covering 2 of those 4 areas. They're covering the space of history of money, that is, and it's covering some measure of economics, right? And that's the hope and the intention of those videos, to help cover those 2 factors. As we zone in for the rest of the classes, we'll be zoning in on the concept of cryptography and the concept of computer science or technology as we continue. So one of the things that cryptocurrencies uses is advanced cryptography, and we will touch on what that means in a short while. And it is used to secure transactions and to prevent counterfeiting. So there's a system in place that actually could prevent what the fiat currency system cannot prevent with their dollars, right? And what is cryptography? So cryptography is a science in itself, and is a science of creating mathematical codes. It uses something called algorithms. You would hear that term already somewhere in some sci-fi show or another place. It uses algorithms, and it scrambles information, right, into an encrypted format, right? This encrypted information can be transmitted securely, and it is then descrambled by whoever receives it. So cryptography deals with the concept of encryption and decryption. The whole idea of the word crypto, you hear the term cryptic, right? It talks about that which is hidden, right? It's something that is hidden. So these codes, there's information that is hidden in coded language, and this information hidden in coded language is transmitted virtually through the internet space and is captured by a person on the other side, who obviously it cannot be any and anybody receiving. So the concept of encryption is applied, but we're going to touch on how this encryption takes place. If you look at your WhatsApp phone, your phone on WhatsApp, sometimes you would see, particularly when you're sending a text, at times you would see WhatsApp says that it is using end-to-end encryption. You ever saw that before? It says you are using end-to-end encryption. And what does that mean? And how does that apply to me sending a text? Most persons ignore that. They don't even understand what end-to-end encryption means. Right? But look at this example here. What we have is that there is a key. When there is a, basically, let me show this first here. So we have a sender that's sending a message, or in this case, information, in the form of text. If it's your WhatsApp, you're sending it. Just replace the tower with your phone, and it sends it. And what it does, it encrypts the message, the coded message, and the person to whom you are sending the message to produces what we call a public key. The public key is basically a code that is shared between the sender and the receiver, right? It is a public code. Actually, it's public, so that means anybody could access that code. However, that code is used to encrypt the information you want to send, and it uses the word ciphertext through the form of ciphertext, which is basically coded language. And then now the receiver, even though the receiver that is the receiver's public address it goes to, he cannot just access the information or decode the information just like that. He has to have a private key. You see, with every message there is a public and private key, but the private key is really only held by the recipient, because it is the private key own holder that has to decrypt or unscramble the scrambled message back into the form of text so that it can be read. So this is really a form of security that is not a new concept. Encryption and decryption have been out years now. We have different protocols. If you were on the Underground Bunker program last Tuesday, I shared a bit about the history of the different technologies. We had Web 1.1, Web 1.2, Web 2.2, and Web 3.2. We are now in the Web 3.2 stage, right? That is the new version of internet. However, each of these developments of the internet had with it protocols, rules, in other words, and rules of operation. In these rules of operation contain rules of encryption, rules of decryption, rules that relates to how to decrypt and how to encrypt using particular codes called keys. And it started in the time with the HTTPS protocol, which had its measure of encryption and decryption. Then, of course, it moved from Web 1.10 into Web 2.2, right? And now we are in Web 3.0. I will encourage you to look at that Underground Bunker session. I will probably place the link in the chat so you all can look at it. It's very informative. And we have the Underground Bunker program every Tuesday night. It's also educational. It basically is a caveat to what we are doing here. So the thing is that the concept of encryption and decryption is not really new. However, the protocol or the rules applied in the processes involving encryption and decryption has developed and changed and has basically formed in new ways. And so that now leads us to the idea of symmetric key cryptography, where the same key is used to encrypt and decrypt the message, right? So it's called symmetric. And symmetric, remember the word symmetry or you know, that English word we used to use long time. What's it called by synonyms? Yeah, it talks about same, right? So symmetry talks about the same key and is used to communicate privately with someone. One needs to communicate the key through secret meetings, sealed envelopes, or trusted couriers. Of course, that had problems of scaling, right? And this is taken from the book called Token Economy, this image. But the concept and practice of plain text encryption, ciphertext decryption, plain text, is the principle and the foundation by which cryptocurrency was built and developed on, right? And just knowing and understanding this is now I'm taking you and moving you away now from economics into science here, right? And trying to be as simple as possible so that every person is able to decrypt what I'm saying mentally, right? So in modern cryptocurrency systems, today, users have what we call a wallet or an account address. Just like you go to the bank, you have an account number. In the form of, in the case of cryptocurrency systems, we use what we call a wallet. That wallet has two keys also involved in it. It has what they call a public key, and it has a private key that is known only to the owner. The private key is used as a form of a digital signature, which of course does what? Causes verification of the transaction. The best and most beautiful way to explain this is using a check. I trust one time or another in our lives we would have been exposed to seeing a check. It might sound like a foolish question, but you never know. And if you've seen a check contains several pieces of information in it. Write in the chat for me, what pieces of information you know a check to contain in it. Write it in the chat for me. And while you're writing it, why I want you to write it? Because I want to be able to help you to relate to what I'm saying in the most simplest form. So write some of the information that is oftentimes placed on a check. Anybody? Write in the chat for me. Some of the information that is encoded or written or placed on a check. Not seeing anybody. People probably writing. Okay. Home says numbers. It has numbers on it. And has a space for name. Oh, okay. All right, I just got a barrage of stuff now. Great. Okay, we have the payee, right? Payee account. You have watermark, okay. Account numbers. Sydney says has a space for the amount of money. Yes, your name. Bank account information. Amount to be charged to the check. Bank name. Okay, great. I want you to remember these factors because it's going to be one of the easiest ways for you to understand the whole idea of what is involved in the cryptocurrency. Okay, someone says signature authorizing the transaction. right? Signature space for the signature, right? Great, great, thank you. So these pieces of information is embodied in a check. Usually a check would have, you would see some, long ago these are what they call ASCIF codes, which would be like punch letters written at the bottom of the check. Now it's basically printed, right? A bunch of string of numbers that are encoded on the bottom of the check, right? Sometimes it's considered, of course, the check information so that you have a track of the sequence of checks that you're using, right? And of course, that code it has some unique features in that code. It would have in it, of course, the code, the branch probably number of the check is issued from. It would have in it, of course, the individual tab number of that check, right? Then it will have some other encoded numbers that the financial institution and the lasers or whatever would be able to recognize and identify those numbers. So this that information, of course, is on the checkbook and for all to see. So we can consider the public key like that string of numbers, and your private key is your signature that you sign the check with, all right? So your signature, of course, you can issue any check to someone and it does not have the signature. What happens? The transaction cannot be meted. The check cannot be changed, right? They will watch you and say, okay, sorry, sir, we can't change the check. There is no signature on it. Well, let's say there is a signature. We know the signature is not matching our records as being verifiable. So the institution of the bank is used as a verifying agent, whether it's a bank or a financial institution, a credit union, or trust or so forth. They are the verifying institution, the third party institution that is used to verify that the amount that is put on that check is transferable to the person that is supposed to go to, and it's been sanctioned by the owner of the account. If the signature is not correct, if the signature is not right, the transaction cannot go through. So the concept of the wallet, with having a public key and a private key, is basically your own personal, and that's the beauty about it. The wallet is your personal checkbook and it's also your account in one. It's your checkbook, but it's also your account holdings in one. So that you have a public key and a private key once you sign up for a wallet. We're going to be doing that demonstration probably in the 4th class as to how to get a wallet, how to set up a wallet. And if you never had one, or you may have one, we're going to go create another wallet. So all of us will have a wallet, right? Now what in tradition, our wallet is used to hold currency, right? Not money, currency. And it's the same, so it's the same practical concept that is now virtualized. So this virtualization of the same practical concept of your wallet is now digital or virtual. It is now the space or the coded language by which your cryptocurrency holdings are held in that secure location. Okay. So the note goes on to say that fund transfers are completed with minimal processing fees, and this is what cryptocurrencies does. You are able to transfer cryptocurrency from your wallet into another person's wallet right, with minimal processing fees that that the banks usually will charge you, because the bank is doing what? They are processing your check. They are processing the transaction by the process of verification, right? And therefore they are allowing users, cryptocurrency allows users to avoid the steep fees that are charged by the banks and financial institutions for even wire transfers, right? Now, wire transfers is basically, a form of a virtual transmission of a code, again, to an account, by which the fees are transferred from one location, of course, cross borders most of the times, right, into other wire accounts. Cryptocurrencies basically operate similar with the concept of wire, except that it operates with lightning speed. Operates with lightning speed. And I don't know what's the cost right now to wire money from one account to overseas. Anybody have a idea? Right now, I've stopped dealing with the banks for a long time, right? But I know it's probably a little hefty piece of money, right? Let's use in the simple example of Western Union, which is a money transfer portal. To transfer money via Western Union, I believe for every 100 US you're transferring, you have to pay 10 US. I don't know if the price went up. It could have gone up to about $15 or $20 by now. But every 100 US you have to transfer from your location internationally, there's a high processing fee. That is where the company Western Union makes their money on. They make their money on the processing fee, right? Banks make their money on the processing fees. Aside from using your money to trade on the markets, which is another part of the whole story, right? But you can use now the cryptocurrency space. What it does is that you know, and this is the beauty about it, because when cryptocurrency began and started, the whole idea of cryptocurrency used as Bitcoin, and we'll talk about that in upcoming class next week particularly. Uh, Bitcoin was used as a payment system, really, right? The practice or the concept of cryptocurrency was used as a payment system that it could transfer money cross borders, and we have all the other benefits we'll talk about in a while that it can do with them. But the thing is that the cryptocurrencies, you one would only make money even through that idea of acquiring cryptocurrencies. There'll be a fee to purchase cryptocurrencies on exchanges, right? Exchanges come like broker houses, or, right, if you want to call it a bank type, like, right? And there are fees as well. The broker or the exchange that facilitates this cryptocurrency makes their money on processing or doing a transaction in order to allow transfer of the cryptocurrency from their holdings to another. Today, persons can also benefit not just by holding cryptocurrency. And I want you all to start to expand your mind, because the possibility and the future holds that eventually many persons could open their own cryptocurrency exchanges, right? Or you can even start your own personal business selling cryptocurrency, buying cryptocurrency and selling cryptocurrency. That, in fact, that's one of our core business in my business, right? We buy Bitcoin and we sell Bitcoin, and we have a charge, a fee, and that fee adds to our holdings. And of course, we can take that fee and invest it back into Bitcoin, get more Bitcoin. So I'm giving you some of the secrets here, right? So you can make money not just buying cryptocurrency and holding it and seeing it increase in value. You cannot just make money by buying cryptocurrency and trading it for others. We can also make money on cryptocurrencies by buying and selling to other persons, creating your own sort of exchange type systems. And the whole idea of the space by which cryptocurrency operates on is highly, right now at this point in time, not as regulated, so that there are no strict, stringent rules, except probably in countries like Trinidad, where there's some restrictions for persons to do it based on, and therefore, and that's a whole different talk, because for want of reality, Trinidad and Tobago on some international cryptocurrency exchanges have been blacklisted because Trinidad and Tobago refused to accept cryptocurrency as a legitimate form of currency transfer. However, if you were to travel to places like Malta and Switzerland and Sweden, right, some places in Canada, right, but more so in that side of the world, cryptocurrency are a part of life, right? China is now growing in that crypto space. Once they were deniers of it, now they too have embraced cryptocurrency. And now, because they are moving to a more cashless society, China has utilized the platforms in a great way and are now building more and more platforms. Singapore, great, a place that is dealing heavy in cryptocurrencies. So the thing is that this side of the world is really backward and behind. And the only reason why it's backward and behind, and I can say this in the space of the classroom here, is because of the US influence in the world on the world stage, particularly though in this side of the world, right? So this is why you see Venezuela will get sanctions, because they want to move away from the US dollar. Any country that wants to move away from the US dollar is given sanctions as a form of punishment for refusing to use their currency as the foreign reserve, right? And therefore the countries are vilified, their leaders are vilified through the use of social media and even the media networks, fake news. And of course, everybody looks at them as criminals. Gaddafi wanted to bring gold into as a currency in his country in Libya. And of course, America suddenly rose up and had a problem with that, right? So these are some realities that we who have stuck our head in the sand for years, we are now coming to understand the real and the true world. And the school will not teach us this. School will not teach us this. So it is important for you to take the initiative now to educate yourself and to encourage others to come to spaces like World Academy to get the education, right? Cryptocurrencies are peer-to-peer type of encryption and rely on the cryptographic technology to protect your assets. This means that cryptocurrency are actually more like stock than conventional money, in that in stock you hold certain units of stock. And so cryptocurrencies, even though, let's say, and this is now bringing you into the space of understanding the language and the terminology involved in cryptocurrencies. For example, when one person says they own a Bitcoin, it means that you are holding 1 unit of Bitcoin that is valued at 10,600 or whatever it might be US right now. If you convert it to TT dollars, that's about what, $70,000, 80-some thousand dollars TT for 1 Bitcoin right now. Anytime, the thing is with Bitcoin, there are what we call, Bitcoin can be divisible. It can be divided into small units. And these small units, or micro units, I should say, these micro units or fractions of a unit, because there's 1 unit is a Bitcoin, and fractions of a unit is called Satoshis, right? S-A-T-O-S-H-I-S, Satoshis. The reason why Bitcoin, the fractions of a Bitcoin is called Satoshis, and where that name comes from is because Bitcoin was founded by a person whose name is Satoshi Nakamoto. And the founder of Bitcoin, who's Satoshi Nakamoto, is me. Just kidding. It can be anybody. Why? Because he never, in history, no one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. No one knows who that is, right? And because of that, that's where the name Satoshi came from. And so if you have 0.00000001, it's called Satoshis, not Bitcoin, right? And so as we get more into Bitcoin next week and talk about it, we will expand on that. But my point is this: in stocks, you can own small parts of a stock, right? In a company, and that is where the similarity lies with cryptocurrency is concerned, right? What makes cryptocurrency so unique, right? And we have 6 factors that makes cryptocurrencies unique. 6 factors, right? The first factor is that cryptocurrencies operate decentralized, in a decentralized space. Remember we said earlier, money basically centralized. It operates through a central point of control called central banks, right? So therefore, they basically control and determine, if they could determine tomorrow that your $1 bill no longer has value, right? There's nothing you can do about it. You cannot once write and say, well, listen, I have a stack of $1 bills and I cannot change it, so please do not let it lose value yet. Would they listen to you? Would they listen to you? It's because they are centralized. What they say goes. What they say, so it is. So the thing is that the fiat currencies are operating in a centralized system. Cryptocurrencies operate in a decentralized system. Well, I should say as much as possible, because there are some centralized spaces. For example, if you decide you want to go on, there's a cryptocurrency exchange called Binance. Binance is operated by a particular group of persons. So the exchange itself is centralized, but the technology is decentralized. The way in which the cryptocurrency moves from one exchange to another is through a decentralized technology that cannot be managed or controlled or manipulated because of the design of the technology, right? So there are no banks or governments controlling cryptocurrencies. They are not built upon trust or authority. In other words, because the founder of the central bank has his inscription on the money, the governor of central bank, of course, that now anybody who receives that money trusts that currency, I should say, trusts that currency because they see it has the signature, has a watermark in it, there's certain identifying features. And these identifying features allow it to be trusted as being valuable, right? So it's built upon that trust. This trust goes further because it is law that it is considered allowed to barter or to do business with. So we trust the government to that what they say go. If this dollar has value of a dollar, then I have to trust that it really has that value. But when you operate a decentralized system, the technology is a form of trust, because the technology says that no one can intercept my transaction when it's leaving from one platform to another and remove value from it. No, the way the technology, just as how gold has intrinsic value, cryptocurrencies carries an intrinsic technological framework that preserves the value based on the multitude of persons, the market, so to speak, right? Nobody could block the transaction, right? And there's no restrictive policies about these assets. So you can transact and move cryptocurrency from one space to another because of its decentralized nature. We're going to talk a little more about decentralized nature a little later on, because the technology basically that's used is called blockchain technology. I will actually be posting a video on the chat for you to look at that explains blockchain technology in the most simplest of ways. But I will explain to you as well, hopefully before the night is over. The second point is that blockchain cryptocurrencies are anonymous or pseudonymous, meaning the identity is hidden, hence the word crypto, right? Your identity is hidden. You don't have your name showing up transacting from one space to another. What you have is a 30-character long random generated code, right? And this 30-character long numerical code that has both, it's alphanumeric, it has both letters and numbers. That's your identifier. So can one know what your identifier is? Only if they're very familiar with your public address. And you tell them that's you. But in terms of the transaction moving in the technological space, your identity is hidden. And this has been cause for the concern of why they believe it can be utilized for fraudulent activity, right? And illegal activity, because of the fact of the synonymity of the platform. Persons can do bad things. But I will tell you that, and I mentioned it last week, research shows that 80% of the wrongdoings, financial activities are done in cash, not crypto. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen in the future, but again, it's the power of the story of the knife. The knife could be used to cut a mango to feed somebody, or the knife could be used to stab somebody. So it's basically in the power of the hand of the person who holds it that will determine, right? The technology itself doesn't have a moral framework, right? So I hear people say, cryptocurrency is bad, it's wicked, it's evil. The technology has no moral fabric of its own. It's the user. It's the person who is doing whatever they are doing. They are the one that carries morality or lack of thereof, right? The technology is no different than the knife. Because if you don't want to believe it or not, back in probably the 100 BC, when someone discovered that they could take metal, put it into a shank, into a wooden handle, and created a knife, that was considered technology in their time. That was the technology for them to be able to cut a fruit open or a slice of whatever they make, or meat or lamb. That was the technology. Today we use that technology every day. We taking a knife every day and placing butter in the bread and cutting up, eating with knife and fork, and right. That was technology at some point in time in its early stage of development. And so this is why cryptocurrency is no different. So of course, when you operate from a more informed place and not an ignoramus space, an ignoramus meaning that people who don't want to learn, but yet they condemn because they don't understand the technology and what is going on. It's just a development and an evolution of technology. It is said that right now technology is increasing exponentially. Every 2 years, technology is 10xing, right? And especially now with COVID and all the things that in space we're operating in, technology will be 20xing, right? So I said all that to say that the whole idea of the anonymity of the cryptocurrencies it works well for persons who appreciate privacy, who appreciate not having someone else, an institution or a government looking over your transactions to see how much slippers you buy and how much groceries you buy and what you buy and what you sell, right? That freedom of privacy, which is a legal right according to the United Nations, you now have that freedom of privacy to operate in the crypto space. Now, the few years ago, especially in Trinidad, if you're not from Trinidad, bear with us, but in Trinidad and Tobago a few years ago, persons were caught being involved in a kidnap ring. And how the kidnap ring ran was that they had a person who was working in the bank who would be checking the accounts of persons. And persons who were making large deposits would now be targets, and now the information will be given or sold to criminals who would now have that list and go and kidnap people. Thank you, Roger. Roger says that's still happening. Yeah, right? So they had a blacklist. And in this blacklist, so listen, when you put your money in these institutions, you're hoping that you can trust these institutions. Cryptocurrencies give us a place where you have a measure and a degree of anonymity to operate and transact business from a real world person to a real world person. Yeah? Another important feature that makes cryptocurrency so unique is the permanency of it. Wow. Some persons see this as a plus, some persons see this as a minus. It is a minus from a security standpoint, and I'll talk about that in a while. But the idea is the permanency that cryptocurrency brings with it, right? And the note here you would see says after a block has been added to the blockchain, and I'll talk about what that is about in a while. But after a block has been added to the blockchain, nobody could reverse or cancel the transaction, right? This extreme security works both ways. On one hand, nobody can dispute your ownership. On the other hand, if scammers and hackers take away your money, you can't do anything about it. So a question comes up, because you just say it's secure, the technology is secure, how scammers and hackers accessing it? Well, just a few months ago, on a Twitter account, we had an event took place where some Twitter accounts were stolen of some celebrities. And what the hacker did, they didn't hack the cryptocurrency, they hacked Twitter accounts, and on the Twitter accounts, they pretending to be the person they hacked, stated we have a charity, we wanted to donate a such and such amount of Bitcoin to a cause. Persons who were generous and giving saw it as an opportunity to be, altruistic and send Bitcoin to a particular wallet address that the scammer would have given, and send the Bitcoin to that person, thinking it's a celebrity they're sending it to. But because, again, the identity of the real person is hidden, so you just see the wallet address, this person generously donated. And through the security protocol of blockchain, the cryptocurrencies left their accounts and went to these fake addresses, these fake Twitter account holders, but a very real cryptocurrency address, and it was deposited into that account. Only to find out that the person, none of the celebrities who was used, their faces and identities used as being connected to the code was not the case. That's a scam, right? So, so the scammer basically was able to get the cryptocurrencies of these donators, right? And can the person say, oh shucks, it's not a real person, let me go back and see if I could get his back? Dear Beyonce, I sent some cryptocurrency to your wallet by mistake. Answer from Beyonce, sorry, it wasn't me. I should say, Shaggy, it wasn't me, right? It wasn't me. And so the person tried to track the blockchain. There's no way to retrieve that. So now the FBI has to come in, and there are minute technology being developed where you can track certain movements on the blockchain. And because now there are sites where when you have to sign up for a wallet, you have to put in certain verifications, particularly if you're using an exchange, and it's called KYC. Bankers will know about that. Know your customer, know your client. Where there are what we call rules where you have to put in your proof of identity. They were able to track through that mechanism, not the blockchain, but through the exchange that the code went to or came from, was issued from, and then now try to find the identity of the person. So the idea is that you want to send stuff out there, the blockchain, you cannot put by, so oh shucks, I press deposit by mistake, and the deposit to somebody's account, that person will be happy. It's not like you send $20 credit on a B-Mobile to another B-Mobile, and you send to the wrong number, and the taxi person say, dear sir, I sent $20 to you in error. That they'll be so good-hearted to send it back to you. That's not always the case. So the permanency of the technology can work for you, and as long as you stay in the safe space and understand the security aspect of it, you will not have any problem. It will work in your favor. Another feature is the global feature. We live in a global world. And so crypto can be transacted at the speed of light, right? As they are confirmed on the blockchain system. The blockchain is the verification system, right? And this, of course, cannot be matched. So we are now able to send all across the world. You're able to now buy and sell things all across the world and get paid in cryptocurrency, right? And again, the banks are being able to track your activity And you know, again, there's this false notion where people say, I have nothing to hide, so therefore I put all my business out there. That is not necessarily a good thing. People think that it's only the immoral person have something to hide. But we have to understand there's a fine line between hiding and privacy. Privacy, right? There's a fine line between hiding and privacy. Hiding comes with the intent of the person, right? Privacy comes with the right of the person. Hiding deals and relates to the intent of the person, right? Whether the intent is a good intent or a bad intent, right? And privacy has to do with your right. Your right for nobody have to know your business, okay? That is what I believe in. I stand for privacy. I believe in it, right? And of course, we live in a time where we see that is trying to be eroded from us, our measure of privacy, right? So of course, you can make transactions regardless of location and buy things from across the world without any of the usual lag. So again, transactions are moving at a faster speed because of the technology, because of the space. You know, you can move at a great measure of speed. Then we have safe, another unique feature, safety. The cryptography behind crypto coins mean that they are almost impossible to hack. Even if someone tries to hack them, they'll be better off mining them, and we'll talk about mining next week, with the same resources. This means there is no real risk to your wallet as long as your password is safe, right? As long as you have your private key. And that is something that's very important. And even traders, when you trade in crypto, don't understand the importance of a private key, right? So you may have a key for your house. You consider that your private keys, right? Let's say you're living in a two-story apartment or in a building project. There's a main gate. That's the public keys used to open a gate. Everybody have a copy of that key. But then to your personal door, there's a private key. And not everybody's supposed to have a copy of that, right? So that private key keeps you safe. So that because nobody else have that private key, when you lock your door in the night, you don't go to bed one, then who will come into your house. It's the same principle applied. When you have your private keys, nobody could come into your account and retrieve your cryptocurrency holdings, your value, and so forth. So this, of course, makes it difficult for someone. So the hacker now, like the bandit, who comes with his prying instrument to try to pry the door open, the energy and effort he uses to pry that door open, you know, he could probably exert that energy and effort trying to get his own apartment, get his own door to work with. So that's the whole concept behind what it's saying here, right? So once you have a wallet and you have a private key, it is important that you have a private key. So any kind of thing signing up for today that tells you, okay, sign up, and they give you a public key, that is the key, the address that you use to send cryptocurrency from one location to the next. If that is all you have, you don't have control of your cryptocurrency. You don't have control of cryptocurrency. Because why? There are many holders of keys for the gate, the public key. So this is why exchanges, whilst it might be nice to do trading in, and people go to exchanges to trade, this is why it's advised not to hold a cryptocurrency in exchanges. Because all it takes, and again, another beautiful real life example. Last month, I think it was Bitstamp or Bithumb, one of those exchanges, the FBI raided and shut down the exchange because they deemed that there was frivolous activity going on with one of the members in the exchange. So people were losing access. If you had Bitcoin in that exchange, hard luck, you couldn't get it because it was shut down. So this is why the exchanges are not a place to hold your cryptocurrencies. You must always have a wallet that is outside of the exchange where you are holder of the public key and a private key. Once you have a public key and a private key, you have the power to encrypt and you have the power to decrypt, right? Or let me put it this way, to send and receive, to withdraw and deposit. So you want to always hold your private keys, right? So that is why it's so important. I'll touch a little more on that when I talk about something in a little moment, right? Are you all awake? You all awake? You all enjoying the session? Please type 1 in the chat if you're enjoying the session, if you're receiving knowledge, understanding, not boring you to death, not sleeping on yourself, right? Great, great, right? Love it. Great, thank you. So another feature of cryptocurrencies is that there's a fixed supply and the problem of no inflation, or I should say the solution of no inflation is here. Because cryptocurrencies is not operating by a centralized system, right? It's not like the central bank, how they print more and more money. You cannot go and produce or print. When you create cryptocurrencies, you don't produce more and more cryptocurrencies on demand. In fact, the supply is controlled. And everybody in the world know what that supply is. Does everybody know in the world what the supply of dollars, the amount of paper money is in the world? Right? There is some measure of it. I think there's actually only 10 billion or trillion, I think 10 billion of actually physical currency, paper money in the world, and the rest is digital. So in cryptocurrency space, you can decide, okay, Bitcoin getting too much money, let me go and produce more Bitcoins to bring down the price, which is what fiat currency does. Every time there's money printed, again, you look at the video, and that's why it's important to watch the video so you understand the background. Every time you print more money, you're liquidating, you are making it more solvent, or you're dissolving the value of the money, right, of the paper dollar, which was once backed by some value. So the idea is that you can produce more cryptocurrency coins on demand. It's controlled and globally known. In fact, the beauty about cryptocurrencies is that there's not necessarily never going to be an increase in cryptocurrencies, but there can be a decrease in cryptocurrencies. And based on the rules that are implemented in the creation of the cryptocurrency, you could decide that you want to do what we call hard fork. You would have heard that term come up if you're in the crypto space, right? Where there's a dividing of the amount of circulating supply of the coins that are on the market. Of course, doing that, what it does is that when you reduce the supply, right, you increase the value. So Bitcoin will continue to have its hard forking mechanism in its rules, and it will come to its final number. It can be divisible no more in the 22nd century. Wow. I wonder if we will be alive to see the 22nd century. You think? Right? But Bitcoin will be hard forked until it reaches the final number. It cannot be hard forked anymore in the 22nd century, right? And of course, the programming that goes into each cryptocurrency is the only thing that will control the supply denomination rate and the inflationary, or in this case, the increase in value, because there's no real inflation issue going on in cryptocurrencies. And that's why it becomes even such a greater, and that's why it's even considered to be considered very well similarly to gold, because gold retains value over time and remains with a store value over a period of time, and it maybe even increases in value over time. And cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, carries some of that similar behavior, right? So it is important to understand that, so that we understand exactly some of the benefits of cryptocurrency. So one of the advantages of cryptocurrency is that cryptos hold the promise of making it easier to transfer funds directly between two parties without the need for a trusted third party like a bank or credit card company. These transfers are instead secured by the use of public keys and private keys and different forms of incentive systems. So you see these two terms come up: proof of work and proof of stake. And this is your homework, people. I want you to go and look up what is proof of work and what is proof of stake. What does those terms mean? Right? What does those terms mean? Proof of work and proof of stake. So write it down. I'll post it in the chat as well. Homework to find out what is proof of work and proof of stake. Very important. Obviously, the disadvantage of cryptocurrency that's stated on my slide is that right now, of course, there are governments that are resisting cryptocurrency usage. And so it has met some measure of resistance. However, I will say this: that disadvantage will not last for very long, because there are more and more governments in the world are opening up to the idea. More and more governments are opening up. I think it was China, one of those I placed in a chat, where they're now doing Bitcoin campaigns in Canada and so forth as well, where persons could actually market. They are marketing Bitcoin now as a real issue. In Trinidad, they're said to have 2 Bitcoin machines in Trinidad. One at Long Circular Mall and one at Westmoreland, right? It is said to be deactivated and not functional, the one at Westmoreland. The one at Long Circular is said to be operational time and time again. They run it for a while and then they shut it down. The reason why is because, one, the government officials would go and will have problems, the banks will have problems with such a machine operating, right? And it's interesting because I understand that machine is owned by what you call it, a casino. Smart thing of the casino, what they do to evade taxes, they pay their clients in cryptocurrency. So the chits, when they're doing the gambling stuff, they get paid in cryptocurrency, and then they go to the machine to retrieve their money. Hence, cutting out already any evidence of transactions being done. So again, it's the holder of the stuff will determine the use of it. But that's not the only thing. There are people who legitimately going to the machine and doing their own private transactions, right? So, of course, one disadvantage is the resistance that some governments and even some traditional economists view cryptocurrency. In fact, I'll say Warren Buffett once laughed at the idea of cryptocurrency, but today it is said he is one of the holders of Bitcoin, right? So for the masses, they say one thing, but in the private social club, it's something else, right? Again, I will say this in this space. The banks, Trinidad and Tobago, who runs the banks? Who own the banks? Who are on the boards of the banks? Yet I dare to tell you that most of those holders who are on the boards of the bank personally hold and own cryptocurrency. So it's almost as if there's one form of economy for everybody else, and there is one economy for themselves. And what cryptocurrency does, and this could be considered another advantage, is that it cuts out, it diminishes the dividing line between the classes where it comes to our economy and our economics, right? Sharice asked the question, if they do change and embrace crypto, wouldn't the government try to regulate it, especially if there's a physical machine to retrieve it? Yes, they may try. And regulations when it comes to cryptocurrencies, there are some countries that are actually trying to tax cryptocurrencies. And the fact is that they could only tax as far as you declare, because the technology in itself, because it is anonymous, cannot bring out that information to the government. So the government still has to depend on the honesty of the citizenry to declare and to claim some of those things. The physical machine, they will have a lot of legalities involved, it being on private property, and the whole private public property thing that's going on right now. So it's the same concept with that as well. So they will try, but regulation, and if there's any kind of regulatory things that will be imposed on cryptocurrency, it will come from the standpoint of the broker houses where persons buy crypto from. And as I said before, exchanges are centralized, most of them, right? The technology to transfer the cryptocurrency is decentralized. So at the end of the day, you don't place a trust in these exchanges either, right? In fact, right now, in the Web 3.0 technology development we are in now, they have something now called DeFi, or decentralized finance. And in decentralized finance, there are what we call exchanges that are decentralized now, truly decentralized. And of course, that is going to be another topic for another class. I can't talk about that now, right? So the thing is that understanding that is important. Let's talk a little bit. We almost home run. I know I'm a little after 8, but we started late. The technology behind cryptocurrency, right? There's a technology behind cryptocurrency. It's called blockchain technology, right? Blockchain can actually be thought of as a combination of several different existing technologies. Whilst these technologies themselves are not new, it is the ways in which they are combined and applied which brought about blockchain. In 1990 was one of the earliest concepts of blockchain that was created. It was created in the form of something called timestamps. Anybody know what a timestamp is? You look at a video, you will see there's a timestamp on it, right? Every transaction that was done in 1990, there will be a digital timestamp to the transaction. And that digital timestamp to the transaction is what would have been used to track and trace and verify the transaction as it moved from one place to another. Even today, let's go back to the analogy of the check. If you go to the bank with a check and it's not dated, can you change it? No. Because the date is a very important part of marking and noting and tracking. So listen, something happened down the road, you could go to the bank and say, but I got the check, I deposited it on this date, but more so, I got it from whoever I got it from. The check was dated, so and so. So check that, and you're going to see the records of the transaction leaving one account or being written up to move on to another. So there is this whole idea of timestamp. A timestamp was the earliest form of blockchain at work, right? And there are three primary components of blockchain. There's what we call private key cryptography, which we talked about. We spent a great deal of talking about private key cryptography already. Then there's something called the distributed network that includes a shared ledger. So track back again to simplicity. Let's talk about the person who goes to the bank, the granny who does not want to use a bank card, and she depends still on her bank book. A bank book will be considered a ledger, a form of a ledger, because it records the date, a particular amount of information, date, amount, all those things we talked about on the check is placed on the bank book in that ledger. And that granny could go home and rest it on the table. Grandson could come and see it. Grandfather, in fact, granny writes a will and say, I'll leave my bank book to you, son, with over $300,000. Or let's say, if you want to modernize it, you get it in bank statements. That's your ledger. But this ledger is seen by all. But when I say seen by all, it's seen by those who on the blockchain is private, who don't know the person whose information this ledger is coming from because it's encoded. It's created in the form of a block, which I will show you what the block looks like in a while. And that block is transferred to several verification points that is outside of the centralized system. Yet nobody knows whose it is, who it comes from, because of the technology of anonymity involved. And it's shared around so that on that network, you can track and trace your activity as it went down the road. Of course, one of the primary components, again, is a means of accounting for the transactions and records related to that particular network. So the blockchain is called blockchain because it is made up of a chain of blocks. The answer is in the word itself. From a technological standpoint, blockchains are formed built on chains of blocks. Now, what does the block has? A blockchain starts with a block. When a coin is created, when you create a cryptocurrency, there's something called a genesis block that's created. Right? You know the word genesis means beginning, for those of you who are Bible readers. So the idea is that genesis block is the beginning of the creation of that particular cryptocurrency. And since then, every time that coin is transferred from one space to another, there have been transactional records and the codes have been changing and developing in terms of numerical growth and value. on that block. So that the block really holds three factors. It holds a certain amount of data. Remember talking about the check? The check has data, and in the data, the check has what? The date, the name the check is issued to, the amount the check is made in, will have the amount numerically written, and of course in words. And based on when you allow it to cash, if you want to cash instantly, you just leave it like it is. If you want to cash in a certain amount of days, you cross the check. All this is considered data. This data is now stored in a block. So that is what the data is that is in this block. It's the date you bought the cryptocurrency. It has the CUR in terms of the address it's going to, the time it's going there, time it's leaving your account. All that is encoded in the data. There is something called a hash. It's not made from potato, okay? As in hash browns, if for those of you who know what that is, right? The hash, the digital hash, is basically a fingerprint. Or like what that check had written, encoded a string of numbers written on the check. That's called the hash. And that digital fingerprint or signature, right? That's a digital signature, is unique to that data that's in that block. And of course, now what happens is that that data and that block goes to creates another block within a particular amount of time. I think it's 10 seconds or so. And based on the blockchain there are rules written where the blockchain can move in faster based on the amount of activities going on that network. So the blocks will create new blocks as it goes from multiple computers that are connected to that virtual network. And each computer will verify the data, and it will have to have a record of the previous block. If something is wrong with the previous block, the block cannot go forward and create a new hash, because there's something wrong in the previous hash. So the signature is wrong, therefore I cannot sanction the continuation of that particular transaction. Until it is dealt with, it will stay lingering in the virtual space. So that is basically the concept of the blockchain. The blockchain is basically a chain of activity that records your transactions, previous and present, validates it by going to multiple what we call nodes or computer systems that are shared in the network. Today you could actually make money also being a computer that wants to join a particular network or a cryptocurrency system, right? And that the word that they use to call those computers are nodes. So you can have what they call a master node or a velocity node, right? And that node means that virtually or actual on your machine is connected to the blockchain that will be used, the power and the power and the storage and the usage of the technology on that computer will be actually pulled on to use to verify the transaction. Once it's verified, it goes on to the next block. There are multiple blocks that it runs at one time or another. And that is what the blockchain basically is about. Of course, the data is like the distributed ledger, that shared bank statement that each block is tracking and checking to make sure that it is validated. once it is validated, it moves on. So I hope you understand that. I will post this picture on the chat for you all for your benefit. But there are four main types of blockchain. Four main types of blockchain. We have a public blockchain, which is for the people, by the people, of the people. Anyone having access to this, to the internet, can become an authorized node by signing in and in that blockchain platform, which I just explained. Then there's a private blockchain where certain amount of persons, right, are in charge and basically is then given access to the masses, but is still held privately by one owner or so forth that created the network. Then you have consortium blockchain. It is semi-decentralized, right? Where a blockchain network is managed by more than one organization. Ripple is an example of that. Ripple organization, where actually the banks are involved in that project. And Ripple basically is a semi-decentralized, it's actually the name of a network that has created a coin on it. Right? I'll talk about that a little more later on. And then we have the hybrid blockchain, which of course works by generating the hashed data blocks using private blockchain networks. And this is then followed by the storing of the data in the public blockchain without compromising the data privacy itself. BitTorrent is something like that, as a hybrid blockchain, where you actually could use your computer. How many people like to download movies and stuff? And use something called torrents. You ever heard the word torrents? T-O-R-R-E-N-T. When you download torrents, using torrents, you will see there's a long encrypted string of numbers, alphanumeric code. That is called a hash. Right? It's the same concept. And what happens is that BitTorrent has a feature where you use the platform called uTorrent. You could download movies and do something called seeding, which is basically they are taking your computer power to pull back towards the network, and you can be rewarded and paid in BitTorrent tokens for doing that. And that those BitTorrent tokens could later be exchanged for value. So there are systems like that operating right now, right? So we're gonna stop here tonight. I don't want to overwhelm you. We've done a lot, right? And anybody have any comments or questions? You can raise your hand.